All right, so we are recording. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Verlette from Illinois Campus Compact. Welcome and thank you for being here. You should all be seeing my screen, which is just one slide currently, and I will be moving the slides forward. If I haven't gotten to you, please mute yourself. There's a little blue box on the side of your picture. I think I muted everyone as they came in. So we're really excited to have you all here. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you have a question during the presentation, there'll be a Q&A at the end, but feel free to tap it or to type it into the chat box, and we will try and address it as we go. And yeah, I think that's about it. So I'm going to hand it over to Gavin to introduce our speakers.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Natalie, and thanks everyone for being here. We got a great turnout for this, and I think it's because this is a topic that is really relevant, and it's something that a lot of people are thinking about right now. In part, the genesis of this topic was because we were doing our knowledge hubs as part of the civic action planning process, and Sarah Goodwin Thiel had done a knowledge hub about how libraries can be involved in community engagement. And then I, in a very, very random series of events, came in contact with two librarians when I was doing campus visits. I was literally walking by the library, and my liaison was like, "Oh, you should meet our librarian. They're really interested in doing and working with us on community engagement initiatives." I was like, "Oh, that's so interesting," because I just came in contact with somebody from Kansas who does this stuff. And then, Anne Marie has been a really great participant in all civic action work at University of Northern Iowa and very active in Iowa Campus Compact. So we thought this would be a really relevant thing. It's something that's going on. Librarians are increasingly part of the community engagement portfolio, and I personally am always imploring my campus liaisons to be thinking of how do you expand the tent, quote unquote, of people that are not typically at the table when talking about community engagement, but they could be really great advocates for you. So there's a lot of space in the library world to do this work. So we're really, really happy to have our two presenters, Anne Marie Gruber, who's an instruction and liaison librarian at University of Northern Iowa, and Sarah Goodwin Thiel, who is a community engagement librarian at University of Kansas. That is KU, just so you all know. I made the mistake of saying like they were in Manhattan, and then like I got really jumped on at some point. It's like, no, we're in Lawrence.
I think we're all about to get over that now. It's not nearly the issue whatsoever. But, maybe, depending on who you talk to.
That's right. But really, really happy that they're here, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to get us underway. So thanks for being here, everyone.
Okay, well, thanks, Gavin, and thanks to all of you for being here this morning. The goal of our webinar, as Gavin was saying, is to discuss the role of the academic library within a community-engaged environment. And as far as we're concerned, academic libraries are very well suited to broaden the reach of community-engaged research activities. And as natural relationship builders, librarians are already engaging with constituents to build our collections, to plan activities and programs, to design instruction sessions, to identify community and transdisciplinary partners. It's something that librarians just naturally do from no matter what kind of librarian you are. So it is a natural move to support our universities in the community engagement arena. This morning, Anne Marie and I are going to be discussing three areas where academic libraries are helping to build these campus community relationships. They are, you can see on your slide, facilitating engagement, physical and online spaces used to showcase faculty, student, and community research, as well as in-class instruction. And we'd like to encourage all of you, particularly the librarians in the group, to share your experiences and your ideas for promoting campus and community engagement. And for everyone out there to share your thoughts and ideas about how libraries can help with the add to the community engaged environment, ways you've experienced it in your own on your own campuses, or ideas that you have come up with just listening to us talk today. So to get us started, Anne Marie is going to start us off with some ideas on facilitating engagement.
Thank you, Sarah, and I'm really happy to be with all of you today. Natalie can go ahead and advance to the next slide. She's our slide guru today, so thank you for that role. Gavin had mentioned the idea of expanding the tent And I think it's exciting that we have librarians on this webinar. We have community engagement professionals on this webinar, as well as some community partners. And sometimes in higher ed, as you all know, we tend to be pretty siloed. So this is a great example of sort of expanding the tent and building bridges across those different constituencies. So I'm glad to see that kind of variety. The other thing I would notice that we have folks from a wide variety of institution sizes and types. I've done this type of library support for community engagement in higher ed for my entire career, about 12 years thus far, both at a small private institution with fewer than 2,000 students, and now at a larger public university, we have about 12,000 students in Cedar Falls, Iowa. So this type of connection between the library and community engagement work on our campuses and beyond our campuses can really happen regardless of those different institutional factors, as long as folks are willing to kind of get across those silos. So in terms of facilitating community engagement, this can include library support for research activities and scholarship, as well as support for the hands-on pieces of community engagement in higher ed, such as service learning in particular courses. My involvement on my campus with community engagement is primarily through helping faculty empower students to engage with information sources in preparation for service learning. And I'll give you some examples of what that can look like throughout the presentation today. One of the things that I think is really important about service learning, as you all see it in action, is that it can help address some misconceptions that some of our students may have, and even those of us who are faculty or staff may have some misconceptions about our own communities many times. So as a librarian, one of my areas of emphasis is really helping students engage with sources of information to help them make evidence-based decisions. And sometimes that means addressing some misconceptions, and we'll see some examples of that. Another thing that we're thinking about in terms of supporting these reciprocal relationships. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody was diving in, I think. Is there a question? Okay, we'll keep trucking. Great. So librarians can support this idea of helping students understand community needs. Many times we may have, there may be some differences between actual community needs and ascribed community needs, or things that we're maybe assuming as either students or faculty or staff that our community needs. And certainly in a spirit of reciprocity, we don't want to be making those assumptions. So librarians can help faculty and staff empower students to engage with information to get a better, more realistic picture of what our communities look like and what their needs are. And even the idea of defining community at a very basic level, using evidence, I think that's a really important piece of service learning and community engagement that sometimes gets forgotten. We may make some assumptions about what our students know or how familiar they are with our community of our campus. I'm on a campus where we have lots of folks from throughout the state. Primarily, our students are from our state, but mostly from small towns throughout Iowa. And they come to what feels to them like a much larger metro area. And they have some misconceptions oftentimes about what the community is. So helping them develop some cultural competence through even just some basic demographic research and comparing our community here around our campus with their hometown, for example, can be useful in giving them a foundation. I've started to work with some faculty on our campus to start to understand what faculty perceptions are of the library's role in service learning and other forms of community engagement. Traditionally, in academic libraries, we were about helping people consume information, and we still do that in all its form. But increasingly, we are helping students and faculty create their own information. And lots of critical thinking for students has to happen as part of that process. So as I've started to talk with faculty about the library's role or potential role within service learning courses, for example, what I'm hearing is that faculty need some support for how to incorporate community-based research or secondary research, even in preparation for service learning, within their courses. They may need some help with assignment design, for example. When I work with classes, and we'll see some examples later on in the session today, I'm hearing from faculty that engaging with research sources really helps increase the level of critical thinking that students are doing with relation to their community. So that's been really advantageous. Another concern that sometimes we hear from faculty in terms of incorporating community engagement is that they're concerned about maintaining a certain level of academic rigor. And one way that I suggest that we sometimes elevate that level of rigor and community engagement activities within our courses is by requiring students to do some level of research. And that can relate to a particular research assignment, whether they're doing advocacy and using some demographic statistics, for example, or simply as a learning aid to help them understand what the community might look like. So that's one area that I've been really involved with. And we'll see some examples of that later on. Sarah's going to give some examples of how, in her work at KU, academic and public libraries have partnered together to strengthen campus and community partnerships.
Thanks, Anne Marie. Yes, the Community Engagement Center in the libraries at KU we're just in our 4th year now, and so it's a fairly new center. And it's been an interesting evolution for us because we realized right away when we started the center that librarians throughout the libraries were already doing a lot of community engagement work. And so there were a lot of stories to tell just with librarians. And then as we started looking across the campus and saw all the wealth of community engaged scholarship and research activities that are going on at KU. So as we were defining our role as for community engagement within the libraries, we decided that the best thing that we could do is that we were best suited for was to tell the story of the community engagement going on our campus and in our community. And so to build those, to showcase our scholarship and to build reciprocal partnerships with people outside the campus and within the campus, we looked to partners in the community, and the public library was a group that we connected with just right away. We're fortunate in Lawrence to have a very vibrant, exciting public library, and they've just redeveloped their space, and they have really taken off in the community. And so we decided to work together to use the strengths of the academic library and the strengths of the public library to better meet the needs of the community. And so that's been a really exciting process, and we've, I think, learned a lot about how similar our work is and how much we can help one another in what we do in building relationships within the community and on campus. The academic library, I think, we bring to the table the rich and vast resources that we have, online databases, electronic resources, our research collections, the level of expertise that's just found at the university through faculty, staff, graduate students. There's a real depth of resources there. But the public library has, they're the ones in the community. They have the network, they have the trust, they are the trusted organization in our community where people are comfortable. You can hold activities at the public library and everyone will come. You know, it's sort of a safe place, if that's a fair way to use that term. The academic library on the campus, we're a little removed, I guess. In Lawrence, if any of you have been to the Lawrence campus, we are physically removed. We're at the top of a hill, of the only hill in Kansas, pretty much, and the University of Kansas sits on top of that, and so it's not easily accessible if you live in Lawrence. Their parking is abysmal, as it is probably on most campuses, and so it's really been helpful for us to partner with the public library that's right in the center of town, just to give easier access to our communities. I think when we started working together, we took a group of people from the public library and the academic and the KU libraries and just asked the question, what if we could provide the best information services to the community of Lawrence? If we could just simplify people's needs, make it a seamless operation to gain the information you needed if you lived in Lawrence, whether you're on campus or in the community. And as we worked together, we identified a lot of shared goals, a lot of things that each of us in the public library and the university library needed to do and wanted to do. And so it was really helpful, and it allowed us to start working together as a collective rather than just separately. And we're hoping that the community will start to feel that working together that we are having, and understand that it's not just such a separate thing. If something's at the university, they have to just forget it, or if something's at the public library, they may not be as interested as they should be. So we're hoping that together we can have a stronger library force. One of the things that's come from working together with the public library is that we've really built a very natural community of practice. When we look for mentors, we know that we can look to the public library staff as well as the university library staff. Our work is very similar. When we 2 years ago, when we had a lot of diversity concerns and conversations just starting on our campus at KU, we realized the public library had the same thing going on in the town. They were being asked the same questions, and we realized that we can be a real team. We can work together, a real community of practice to help one another with the questions and issues that we're being faced with. And so I would say that at KU, we're working primarily with the public library, but in past projects that I've been on, we've worked with K through 12 librarians, with community college librarians, and it's always across the board a real benefit. You know, we come from different cultures. We have to work with each other a little differently. People have different time frames, everything's very different, you know, and of how we all work. And so we have to respect the culture of each type of librarian. But I have found that there's always lots to gain by turning to your library colleagues, no matter what kind of library they're working in. And so with that, we're now going to be talking about providing physical and online spaces to showcase and increase access to community and campus scholarship. And Anne Marie is going to start us off there.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I love this idea of academic libraries having sort of a public-facing side that's really interacting with folks off campus, and Sarah gave you some good examples of that. Here at University of Northern Iowa, we are open to the public. We're a public institution, and anyone from the community can come in and log into our computers with a guest account and use our resources, and we're here as a community resource as well. And that sometimes is the case with academic libraries. It really depends on public versus private and some other factors, but we also have some external facing services and programs. For example, we host a lot of school groups. Sarah mentioned working with K-12. We very frequently have history courses coming in of high school students preparing their National History Day projects here in our library using our resources, for example. We also have a museum as part of the library, and they are often out in the community. They have traveling trunks where they take museum artifacts out into the area schools, for example. So many times academic libraries are doing this sort of external facing community engagement themselves. We're going to turn now to this idea of how academic libraries are supporting the community engagement work already happening on their campuses beyond what they're doing as a library themselves. So some of that has to do with physical and online spaces. So here on the left, you see an example of a library instruction session. This was a class that I worked with, a first-year seminar course that lasts for a year. It includes the composition and public speaking components of the liberal arts core here at UNI. This group was doing a service learning project with our regional food bank, and prior to going out into the community, the instructor wanted the students to do some secondary research, and in this case they're looking at a map related to hunger and food insecurity issues that we found, and I facilitated that session, prepared some questions for them to explore, and gave them some suggested resources to look at in terms of research, both nonprofit resources, but also government resources that in this case, first year students had no idea existed. You know, that there is a food desert map out there that you can find, things like that. They didn't even know what the phrase food desert meant, or food insecurity. Yes, there is a federal definition of that. Let's look at what that means. So those are some of the things that we explored in that particular session. So we provide spaces for that. This happened in a multi-use classroom that we have, so you can see that the students are projecting to the TV from a library laptop, so we can all see kind of what that work is as they're engaging in that research. Also, as part of these classes and projects that I'm working with, we provide library spaces for students and faculty to meet with community partners. We have lots of available space in our library for large and small events, individual meetings, and various things that faculty and students might need to bring in outside community members to meet with them. We have a maker space in our library. That's an area that has sewing machine and art supplies and a 3D printer and things like that. So that's open to the community as well. And some of our service learning projects have involved inviting folks from the community to use that space as well. We have some special technology that's not available in the community. We have had some area youth visit our library as part of a service learning project in a course and use our green screen production studio to make some short films and take some great photos with fun backdrops. So this idea of kind of working with admissions, getting this sort of recruitment piece involved, that libraries are increasingly very interested in supporting recruitment and retention on our campuses, and there's a lot of data to suggest that use of academic libraries can support recruitment and retention of students in higher ed. So service learning can sometimes make a connection there for us, which has been great. One caveat I would say to using the library physical spaces for community engagement, events and meetings and so on, is that our campus is not necessarily a neutral space. And by that I mean that sometimes community members can find coming to campus a bit intimidating, maybe even inconvenient. Sarah mentioned parking, and I know from talking with many of you at various community engagement conferences and so on that we're not alone in that concern as a campus. So thinking about ways to make that easier for folks to come to our campus, that's always a discussion point for us as a campus, but also that idea, as Sarah mentioned, of going out into the community as a library and maybe hosting things at the public library that's a little more accessible for folks in the community. That's something that we explore as well. Beyond the physical spaces, there are online spaces that many academic libraries provide that can help showcase some of the community engaged scholarship that our faculty and students are doing. So some of your institutions, many of them, have what's called an institutional repository, and this means an online space for collecting and displaying and sharing the scholarship and creative work of the university. So that can be faculty research, that can be student projects, that can be a variety of things. I'm going to show you some examples here. Natalie's going to let me take over the screens for a moment, and I will go ahead and share my screen with you so we can see live what this looks like. So I have pulled up, hopefully you can all see that. This is UNI ScholarWorks, which is our institutional repository here at UNI. And you can see in the middle that we have some different collections. We can look by different department or research unit and so on. This is also a publishing platform for open access journals. We can archive department newsletters, magazines, any campus events or conferences. The conference website can be through this platform. Electronic theses and dissertations and so on. I'm going to show you the community engagement collection. This is something that I've worked with our digital scholarship librarian on. She's in charge of this website, and I've encouraged her to expand the community engagement collection. Within this collection, there are lots of different resources, images, films, all sorts of things that come from community engagement projects. I know sometimes on our campuses there's so much great work happening, but stopping to take the time to tell the story is a hard thing to do. So this is an area where the library can capture all the things that are happening and make them publicly available. This is a picture of our African American Read-In, which is a community engagement project that the library supports with our College of Education here at UNI. We have about 300 second and third graders every February come and spend the day with us, and they read and learn about African American literature and history. So this is in our youth collection with some students participating in that. What you see is a readership map of where in the world our materials that are here are being downloaded from, so that it shows kind of our impact. And then down below we have the sub-collections, and I'm just going to show briefly one of them. So we have a Service Learning Institute here at UNI, and that's a partnership between our Community Engagement Office on campus and Iowa Campus Compact. So every summer faculty can apply and be selected. It's a competitive process to participate in the Service Learning Institute, where they learn best practices of service learning in higher education with our executive director, Emily Shields of Iowa Campus Compact. And then as part of that 3-day institute, faculty are partnered with a community agency and co-create a project from the ground up together. And that we're going into our 3rd year of that, and it's been really successful. So a few of those projects have been archived here, and I'm going to show you one example of them. This is the Moving Words project. This is from an art course, a first-year art course, and the students in this course partnered with the Waterloo Writing Project, and that's an area nonprofit that uses art and the written word and the spoken word to encourage creativity among K-12 participants, mostly middle school and high school students, but some elementary students participate in that as well. So this partnership resulted in our UNI art students in a first-year art course creating stop motion animation films based on the writings and sometimes drawings for our smallest, youngest participants from those youth. And so that was a great project. So we have all the project documents here. We have the films themselves. We have the publicity information. We have the photo gallery. So I'm going to just show that real quick. You can see when the students came to our the library. This is in the library. Our 3D concept students from that course helped our young authors use our green screen production studio. So many of those youth had never been to our campus before, even though they may live just 10 or 15 minutes away. For some of them, it feels a world away. And so this was a chance to really invite them to campus and help them experience what UNI is like. This project culminated in a red carpet film premiere, and so we see some photos from that event. We had photography students serve as paparazzi, so the area youth were really felt like celebrities at this event. And then the films were shown, and some of the youth read their works. And then we also have photos from the actual creation of the films. So kind of the work in progress, so to speak, as they went through that. So all of this is archived with the actual final films, with the works of the participants. So these were, let me find one. This is my favorite. This was our youngest participant, and she drew this fabulous picture that inspired one of our films. We'll see if it'll load here. So I don't know if Zoom's making it a little bit smaller, but you might have to be in suspense, but make sure that you take a look at Danaya's cookie because it's really adorable. There it is. So it's a little bit big, but it's a giant chocolate chip cookie, and she inspired our first year art students at UNI to create a film about this cookie, and they used stop motion animation. So it was really wonderful connection for them to make. So these are the types of things that we can archive within our community engagement collection in our institutional repository. And this is a growing collection for us. We've had 2 community engagement courses actually publish books, and the ebook versions are in ScholarWorks right here, so the community can access them as well. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and stop sharing my screen so Natalie gets the control back. And Sarah is going to go into a little bit more about open access to ensure that we're making our work available to the community.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. And that was a great overview of the kinds of things that can be found on the University Digital Repository. I love it that Northern Iowa is showcasing the service learning work of their campus. That's something that I think is again, difficult to tell that story. And the students are doing these wonderful projects, and we have poster sessions and things like that on our campus throughout the year where the students can showcase their work. But to have something in a digital repository that is openly available to anyone, is preserved, and can be accessible so people can see the work that these students are doing in the communities is really a wonderful thing to do. What we're focusing on at KU is also, I think, very necessary, and that's to, we're building in our digital repository, ScholarWorks, we're building a new, it's a little confusing because the groups in our digital repository are called communities. But we've just developed a community in ScholarWorks on community partners in scholarship. And that's where we hope to really be adding more and more community engagement scholarship from campus and community partners. And I have heard, as I have been, community engagement librarian, there are many people within the community that get frustrated with projects that they're doing with campuses because they do a lot of research together and everything's published in scholarly journals, and the community loses access to that material. So making those publications easily available to everyone, I think, is a real responsibility for the university. And so we're hoping we're beginning to build our community in ScholarWorks is to showcase and feature the articles, monographs, conference proceedings, presentations, any number of things, image collections, audio, video, of the community scholars are working on. And in some kind of partnership with something at the university, I think that we're at this point having, there needs to be a connection there in some way, but providing a way that community partners can showcase their work. And because often they don't have a format in which to do that. They don't have, the university just has a lot of resources that we can easily share that's to the advantage of everyone to do that. So I don't have a lot that I can show you at this point because we're just beginning this community partners in scholarship community in ScholarWorks, but I'm really excited about the potential for this. But the other way at KU that we are showcasing the scholarship of our campus and community partners is through exhibits and a lecture series. And the image that you see on the screen right now is our the Harricombe Gallery, which is the main gallery in the KU libraries. And this is an exhibition. It's a funny little space. It's not small. It's not large. It's in the middle of a student study area on the main floor of the library. And we created a gallery without walls, and you can kind of see the ceiling has different colored tiles, the floor has different carpeting, the walls are painted differently, and we have our gallery space is there in the middle of a study area where people are traversing back and forth all the time. So it's very easily accessible. It's also another unique thing about this, I think, maybe not unique, but it's what we're doing is showcasing interdisciplinary and community scholarship on any subject area. The exhibit that you see right there is our last semester's exhibit, this current exhibit on the Vietnam War. And we are bringing in collections and resources from throughout all the several different departments on the KU campus, as well as community partners and beyond our region. And because we are bringing in collections from other places, we rely almost entirely on digital surrogate images. We don't have primary resource materials in these exhibits because we don't have wedded security, because the cases are locked, but it's not in a locked room as a gallery space. And so we're not comfortable putting primary resource materials in here. So instead we do high quality digital surrogates, which allows us to bring in images from collections across our local region and beyond. It's turned out to be a really nice way to showcase a lot of work in one area coming from a lot of different partners. So the Harricombe Gallery it's been a great success, and we've been able to build relationships with people in the community as we bring in the work that they're doing, as well as lots and lots of different departments on campus around a single topic. And it's been interesting. Not only are we building relationships with community members, but when you do an interdisciplinary exhibition like this, it's very interesting how many people on campus aren't aware that there are other people in different departments that are doing similar work that they could be working with. So it's been a real nice opportunity for the libraries to provide a way for campus scholars to come together and realize that they have a lot in common and things that they can share. So the Haircomb Gallery is a unique gallery space in the libraries. We have another gallery, beautiful gallery in our special collections library, which is a totally primary resource exhibition space, more of a traditional exhibition space. But this gallery is made to showcase the work of partners, lots of partners from locally and to globally. And it's been quite a success, and it's been a way to really get people together, lower barriers as we are asking people to showcase their work that they may not have been asked to showcase their work before. People are very enthusiastic about these opportunities to tell their stories, and it's really a lot of fun to be the ones to make that happen. In addition to the Haircomb Gallery, we have a gallery lecture series event. The gallery exhibits are up for a full semester, and during that time we have two events that are held. Primarily the audience is our undergraduate students, but it's open to the community, and faculty members and community members, graduate students are invited in to talk about their research and have an informal conversation about their research. So the Haircomb Gallery, these are people who have contributed to the gallery exhibition already. So it's a way to broaden the reach of the exhibition throughout the semester. Another way we're working to do that is a really neat idea that the campus has done. KU has a traveling classroom. And Natalie, I don't know if you could go back to our very first slide of our slideshow. Just briefly, sorry. That's it. Okay, this Airstream right here is what we call the MoCo Lab. It's the Mobile Collaboratory, and it's KU's traveling classroom. This was a grant-funded project with several departments on campus who got money together for architecture students to buy this 1972 Airstream off of Craigslist. I think they didn't spend much money, but it was not in good shape when they hauled it back to the KU campus, and the architecture students spoke with people across campus as to how they might use such a classroom, and totally redid the outside and the inside with portable kinds of furnitures that can be resituated depending on who the user is at the time. So the library uses the MoCo Lab as our traveling exhibition venue, and it's been a lot of fun, and we can take it out into the community. So when we do exhibitions, we do a portable version of each exhibition that can go into the MoCo Lab. And now, Natalie, if you go back to where we were, sorry about this. Next slide. Okay, down in the bottom corner, you'll see that's the inside of the MoCo Lab. And those boards that you can see across, propped up on the side, those are photographs of each of our exhibition cases that are inside the Haircomb Gallery. And so they get reformatted a little bit and printed in a way that can go into the MoCo Lab, and people then can come in and they will have, digital versions of slideshows and handouts and different materials that support what the exhibition is all about. But it's a neat way to bring our exhibitions into the community and encourage people to make the trip to campus to see the full thing. So this has been a wonderful tool for the libraries to use to reach out into the community, to encourage people to come to campus, really is the main goal for us for the MoCo Lab. There's something I wanted to say, and now I can't remember. Never mind, it may come back to me. So now we go back to Anne-Marie to talk about supporting service learning.
Thank you, Sarah. So there's a familiar picture. I forgot that the Denia's cookie was here. So you can see it in a little bit better view here. So I'd mentioned previously a bit about the library sort of instructional role with helping facilitate service learning courses, helping students engage with secondary research, gather information. Really what we're starting to see is that this supports higher quality service learning in terms of advocacy, direct service, and indirect service, that the secondary research is really able to help students form a foundation of information to prepare to go out into the community and be more effective about their community impacts, which has been great. this is my primary role on our campus. And I would note here that unlike at a larger institution like KU, where there is a community engagement unit within the library, at University of Northern Iowa, we currently don't have a designated community engagement librarian or community engagement unit. I've simply taken it on as an interest area and sort of a passion area for me. And I think over time, because community engagement is one of our 3 goals for the university's strategic plan, and the library is working on a new strategic plan in concert with that right now. I think there is some potential for a community engagement librarian sort of role. So those conversations are just starting to happen right now on our campus. But primarily my involvement is this in-class instruction with community engagement projects to help students do research to prepare to do those. In terms of helping with students' information literacy skills, sort of understanding the ins and outs of the information landscape and the complexities of the information landscape, this is something that librarians are doing across the curriculum in a variety of ways. One way that I like to describe it for folks who are not from the library world, which is many of you, is that librarians thought about fake news and help people sift out fake from real long before the rest of the world was calling it fake news. And I think sometimes that's a sort of false dichotomy of fake news versus truth, whereas really there are many, many forms of misinformation and disinformation, and lots of complexities too, like what information costs money and what information is free. For many of our students, even when they're using our subscription databases, it feels free to them because if they're on campus, it gets them right in. It IP authenticates and they're able to get those things. Or if they search in Google Scholar, they're able to find some free articles out there. But paywalls are still a thing. So we do a lot of conversation with students about accessing information, why information costs money, and things like that. There are lots of complexities to the information landscape in 2017, and it's only getting more complex. And in community work, I think that's exacerbated more. Typically with these classes, we're focusing on the freely available information. That could be demographic information from the Census Bureau, for example. That could be looking at USDA data about food insecurity, for example. I'll give you a quick example of some things that might open students' eyes a little bit. I've worked with a family services course for a number of semesters where every student needs to work with a nonprofit agency in the community, and that they can sort of self-select where they'd like to volunteer. And there is a pretty strong service learning component with reflection assignments and journals and so on. But each student is working with a different agency. I bring the class in partnership with the faculty member and help the students engage in some of this secondary research, looking at statistics, for example, looking to see is there a newsletter from this organization or an annual report. Some of that information is really easy to find, and sometimes it's harder than you might expect. Some smaller community partners may not even have a website. We've run into that many times. So trying to determine where different information is available can be kind of complex when it comes to community work. And also sometimes our students forget that human beings are sources of information. So sometimes it takes picking up the phone or stopping by the organization to get some detailed information that we might need to prepare to work with them. But one of these family services courses that I worked with, I had the students streaming into class before we were ready to get started. And I have little whiteboards that I give each student so they can write their name and the agency they're planning to partner with. And there's a student who was working with our Alternatives Pregnancy Center, Crisis Pregnancy Center. And I just got in conversation with her before class started. I said, oh, have you seen any of the stats about our local area around our campus and our county related to unplanned pregnancy or teen pregnancy? And she said, no, I haven't seen the stats, but I'm sure it's gone way up. And I said, hold that thought. So it turns out when she did the research, and I had seen the research, that actually it was far from the case, that she had this misconception, but actually unplanned pregnancy had decreased by about 40% in 10 years, reflecting national data trends. And so I imagine what would have happened had she gone out into the community and worked with that community partner with this misconception. So this idea of doing secondary research and preparation really was able to ensure that our students were sort of doing their homework, so to speak, and preparing well to represent our institution in the community with this information under their belts. And so in some cases, faculty are turning this secondary research into assignments that students are working on. Maybe they're doing a research paper, maybe they're doing a presentation, maybe they're doing a public panel that's open to the community that's held either on campus or off campus. I've seen lots of different models for that. Librarians are helping with things like assignment design. I mentioned previously I'm finding a lot of faculty want to incorporate research into community engagement, but some of them are not quite sure how to do that. And so librarians can provide some support for how to design effective research assignments to get those, bump up those levels of information skills for our students as it pertains to community engagement projects. The other piece here that I would mention in terms of tips for working with librarians, for those of you who are community engagement professionals or faculty, on some campuses, there may be a particular librarian who's focused on that. As I mentioned, my campus does not have one of those people designated. I think I'm sort of the de facto because this is my research area, and I've offered this to faculty across campus in terms of teaching opportunities. But I basically have done a train-the-trainer model with other librarians at my institution. So I help them if they get these sorts of requests from faculty, or if they're reaching out to faculty to offer instruction in how to do research to support community work, then I'm helping those librarians prepare the session for those classes. It's really a growing area, as we've mentioned. Many academic libraries are very interested in tiptoeing into this. There's some really great resources out there, especially in terms of case studies right now. And the profession of librarianship is really working on going beyond the case study into higher level research in similar ways to the community engagement literature. But again, in terms of silos, most of the examples and the research about the library's role in community engagement really is sort of siloed in the library science literature. The community engagement literature doesn't quite know about us yet. And several of us, including some other librarians on the webinar, are trying to bridge those gaps and be boundary spanners a bit. So you'll see more of that forthcoming. Another area just to think about is helping community members increase their information literacy skills. Sarah mentioned partnering with public libraries. There have been some partnerships here in my state between academic and public libraries, as well as school libraries, to help the general public increase their level of understanding of how to evaluate sources, for example. Especially with relation to health topics, economic topics, those types of things, especially in this era of fake news and other forms of mis and disinformation. The information landscape is a really complex place and a really confusing place, and academic librarians can offer some guidance on how to sift through all of that in an effective way. So there are some potential partnerships there. I haven't done instruction in that way, but I'm certainly interested in doing that. We have about 10 minutes left, so I wanted to transition us to the Q&A. And we're certainly, both Sarah and I are certainly happy to answer questions outside of the session as well. In terms of getting us started with sort of a Q&A conversation, I'm interested to hear from community engagement professionals and community partners. Is there maybe one takeaway or one idea that we've talked about today that you might consider taking to your library and doing an ask to see if they're interested in partnering? Or are there ways that you're already partnering with your academic library that you might want to share? And then for the librarians in the group, we'd love to hear some examples of how you're partnering on your campus and beyond to support community engagement work. And feel free to use either the chat or to unmute your microphone and talk if you have a question. So we'll open it up now.
Anne Marie, while people are thinking of their questions, I wanted to, there's this chat. I'll come back.
Great. M. Stoop says, I'm excited about the opportunity to showcase community engaged scholarship through the online spaces. Yeah, typically there'd be a coordinator of the institutional repository at your library. So that's a great person to contact. And even if you're at a fairly small institution, my previous institution with fewer than 2,000 students had an institutional repository. Not all campuses do, but increasingly that's something that libraries are offering. So definitely ask about that. The archiving of all of that work is important.
Another way to think about that too for the smaller campuses is that larger campuses may be able to work with you with their institutional repository. So you might be able to put things on a larger institution's repository if you don't have that kind of repository yourself. And so again, that would be about making community scholarship accessible, and that whether it's a community, if it's a smaller higher education institution, schools, community partners, et cetera. So I would encourage you to talk to your larger institutions in the area if you don't have an institutional repository yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's a great tip. So for those of you who are partnering with libraries or are interested in doing so, what ideas do you have? I just got a chat from Olivia. She's at American University. She serves on the faculty, she's a librarian. She serves on the faculty advisory group for the Campus Center for Community Engagement and Service. So librarians are very eager to jump into committees, those sorts of things. If you have an advisory board or things like that for your community engagement office on campus, asking a librarian if they're interested in serving on that committee, that might be a really great way to get connected.
And I know that one of the reasons why we wanted to do this webinar is to give you a little bit of a background about what kind of the life is like of a librarian, what are their terms that they use, what are some things that make sense to them, in hopes that community engagement professionals can kind of go and say, oh, I've learned that librarians do all these things. Could you be part of our advisory committee, or would you come into our class or something like that? So in part, we wanted to kind of arm you with, you know, some of the ways that you could think to approach. But I'm also kind of curious to know if anyone's had any struggles or pushback from librarians thinking that, like, oh, you know, that's great, but we're kind of staying in our lane over here in the library. I don't know if anyone there. At the same time, Leah just asked a question, or Lee, about that. Do you see that in?
Yeah, so Leah's question is, do you actively seek out service learning courses to offer library instruction, or do they come to you? How do you reach these courses? Primarily, my connection has been through the Service Learning Institute on my campus. So 10 faculty are selected for that each summer. I'm on the selection committee for that group and the planning committee for that, that institute. And I present to that group every summer. I actually have the faculty pretend to be students. It's held in May, right after the semester concludes. And so to have a little fun, I have them pretend to be students, and I do a simulation of what a session could look like. Many faculty have not had library instruction in their courses before, and so being able to see it firsthand and participate in it, that has really opened some eyes to the potential for that instruction. So many of those folks have contacted me afterwards and said, I like what you did. Can you do it this way for my class, or can we tweak it and do it in this other course? So, and then really word of mouth a lot. We also have a liaison program here. Many larger academic libraries, and some smaller ones too, have a liaison program where a librarian is assigned to each department, each academic department. So I have social work, family services, all of the hard sciences, and a few others. It's kind of a strange combination, so I never get bored. But I definitely am plugged in with conversations with those faculty. If they have service learning or community engagement projects going on, I certainly offer that instruction if it's relevant to them.
And I think that it's I mean, Emery was describing how she's doing outreach to the faculty, and I think often it's really kind of a two-way street, because I think librarians are often going through, the instructional librarians often, I know here, go to the different departments and they're aware of the kinds of instructions that can be done for people's classes, and so appointments are made and these things are scheduled before, as professors are putting their curriculums together. So it can be done that way, where the librarian is going out to the departments or to the Service Learning Center, or vice versa, where the Service Learning Center comes to the library and just says, is there someone here who can help me? We were talking at the Great Plains Campus Compact launch a few weeks ago about the idea of libraries just being the place of yes. If we could promote ourselves out to the campus to just say, whatever the question, can you help me with whatever, the answer is yes, because chances are someone at your library can point you to the person that you should be talking to. And so, whether or not it's the librarian reaching out to service learning or vice versa, I think either way would be successful.
Yeah, that's a good point. We have, there's a question in the chat from Alan. He's from, if I'm recalling, Otterbein. And he says we've used LibGuides, which some institutions have. That's a subscription platform that librarians use to make customized web pages for particular courses or topics. And they've used LibGuides to help promote volunteering opportunities. That basically serves as a department sort of page for the Center for Community Engagement on their campus. So that's another sort of online platform that libraries many times have at their disposal to customize web pages. I think sometimes that's a little easier for us than going through the university relations department to do changes to the overall university website. So there's some more flexibility there. The other thing I would mention, Sarah said this sort of idea of yes. I call that the default answer of yes. So I think we're on the same page there. That's my philosophy of librarianship as well. I would say Gavin mentioned this idea of the blowback, push back a little bit. And I've heard some community engagement professionals say, I sought out this sort of connection with our library and I wasn't feeling it. I didn't get this sort of jumping in, eagerness. Sometimes that comes from a lack of resources. Here at UNI, our library budget has been flat for 15 years. So even in terms of staffing, in terms of materials that we're able to purchase, our buying power has gone down. Our ability to replace retired librarians, for example, has gone down. Just like all departments across most of our campuses, we're facing those sort of crunches, right? So that's where part of that can come from. The other thing is it may feel really different for some librarians to be involved with this type of work when they're used to the traditional helping with the research paper or the speech or whatever type of research is kind of that more traditional academic work. I take a very broad scope of librarianship, and increasingly new librarians are sort of opening that up a little bit more. So I would say if you get some of that pushback a little bit, think about where it's coming from, if it's sort of budgetary and staffing limitations, or if it's, this is teaching an old dog new tricks. I would say the profession is definitely moving in the direction of supporting this type of work. So maybe ask the next person, the next librarian, and see if there's some more openness there. Kara from Iowa State University is asking, is there a hashtag for the session or someone that we should tweet at? I will leave that to Gavin or Natalie to answer.
I don't think we have a hashtag, but feel free to tag Wisconsin Campus Compact or Illinois Campus Compact.
Great. Other last questions?
I did get just a private question about whether or not this is being recorded and will it be available. And so, yeah, after this, I'm going to, I have to download a whole bunch of stuff, but it should be available on the Illinois Campus Compact website and the Wisconsin Campus Compact website within the next couple of days. So we'll send everyone who's participated or signed up the link, but it'll also be available online.
Yeah. Thanks, Natalie. Okay, we're at time. So hopefully everybody got some good stuff out of it. I know that I did, and really wanted to say thanks a lot to Anne-Marie and Sarah for spending their time. And hopefully this communication can continue. I think Sarah and Anne-Marie have also been willing to answer emails. They're really good. And then hopefully we'll see you at the National Campus Compact meeting in March in Indianapolis. I don't know if everybody's going to be there, but I will be, and I think Anne-Marie's going to be there. Natalie's going to be there. Sarah?
Yes, I'm going to be there.
I will not. I will be on maternity leave.
Oh, that's right.
That's an excuse.
So enjoy it without me. I will follow the tweets, etc. So.
Maybe you could zoom in.
Yeah, you can zoom.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
so much, everybody.
Bye. And Sarah, Anne-Marie,